Hello, this is Pharaoh Vincent with Nation 506, and I just wanted to key off of a previous video where I was talking about every troop and what their active abilities are, as well as what their general purpose is within the game and how they interact in a combat fleet. So this video is going to focus specifically on long-range players, which is a majority of the player base, and I want to talk about a few different formations. I'm not going to go into specific details about the troop types themselves. You will need to go back to that previous video to really know why I'm picking what I am picking. But I do want to talk about the best formations for various events and give you a couple of different options. And I want to start with Void and Loss events. So more specifically Void for your nation once you've unlocked it, or really just anytime you're fighting within the nation. Especially when you're fighting with your alliance, right? You're going to want to use, this particular formation. It's also the most common, right? This is the bread and butter of all formations. It's the 1-198. It's one of every single troop type, kind of like you see here. And you're going to get one individual troop of all of the melee, mid-row, and long-range troops. And you want to get it this way only because it allows your troops to kind of absorb some hits without taking a ton of heavy losses, right? When you have 20, 30 people attacking, especially if it's a staggered attack, you're going to find that you have the least amount of losses, right? It's always worth mentioning you're going to max either snipers or cannons depending on your city level. And I do say or. A lot of people would use both, right? I could technically add in 6,000 cannons right now, but I don't like to max out the fleet only because, you really want to stick with whatever your highest tier troop is between snipers or cannons for a 1-198. It is not the highest kill fleet, but it is the safest. It gets the least amount of losses, and that is why you want to do that. The other thing about the 1-198 that I always like to talk about is there's this modification. If you know you're going to get a big hit, your alliance may ask you to send 100 shredders. So the 1-198, this is always my one fleet, right? I'll get those zombies down. This is always my one fleet. And then I like to save the 100 shredder variant as my two fleet. So that way, if it's a big hit, I can press 2. But generally for a Void, I'm always pressing 1 when I set out. And that is, going to give me the most bang for my buck. Now, when we get away from Voids and we start talking about events where there are no losses, this is going to be your Frenzies, your Chaos Lands, really Triangle War, Duel for Dominance, all of these other events. You really want to focus in on a kind of a different formation. And I generally use about a third of my total fleet size on my shredders or any melee troop. So if you are rocking T10s like me, I do recommend the Wasteland Kings. If you are in a level where cannons are your best, your C26, your C34, feel free to substitute those out with the death tanks. They're fairly comparable when you have them in the same number. Although I do like the performance of the T10 shredders over the T11 tanks, but they're generally pretty okay. From there, you really want to focus on the best unit in the game for you, which will either be these EMP cannons, which are amazing. If you have the T12 cannons, you'd use those instead. Or your uranium cannons if you're C26, or the Doomsday cannons if you have those T11s. And you want to focus on those troops specifically as your main ones. If you still have fleet capacity left, that is when I recommend adding in, a little bit more snipers if you really want to. Although if you've watched my previous video, you'll know that I think snipers are probably the most trash unit in the game. I personally use the Pyromasters, specifically the T10 rockets. And I have a reason behind that. The T10 rockets I actually use because I'm basically using the same logic that a mid-range player is using as a long-range player. So you may actually get some benefit out of that depending on your statistics. And that's really the best formations in the game for the various combat modes. I think the only caveat that I might make for anyone out there is, and I haven't fully tested this yet, but I do recommend it, for defensive battles. When you know you're going to be in a defensive battle, I plan on getting a lot more of these T11 Axemen, and I'll report back in on it in a future video and tell you how that goes. But for things like Triangle War defensive fleets and Duel for Dominance defensive fleets, I plan on using these T11 Axemen and see how they perform, because I think they may outperform the Shredders. So more to come, but I appreciate all of the time that you've given me, and if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave comments down below, and good luck and happy hunting.